You know this story. The cunning hero, the man of many turns, the one who defeated Troy with the wooden horse, the one who navigated sirens and cyclops and sea monsters, the one who resisted gods and goddesses in temptation for 10 years and finally came home. Odysseus, the most clever man in Greek mythology, the one who survived everything. You know it like this. After 10 years fighting in Troy, Odysseus spends another 10 years trying to get home to Ithaca. He faces the Cyclops Polyphemus, the witch Circe, the sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the land of the dead, the wrath of Poseidon. Through intelligence, resourcefulness, and divine help, he overcomes each obstacle and finally returns home to Penelope, the ultimate survivor, the ultimate hero. Now let me tell you what the Odyssey actually records about what Odysseus' survival cost. Not the obstacles he overcame. What he left behind every time he overcame them. He started with 12 ships. He arrived home alone. Every person who sailed with him from Troy is dead, and the Odyssey shows us, clearly, whose choices caused most of those deaths. The encounter with the Cyclops Polyphemus is one of the most famous episodes in the Odyssey. The clever hero blinds the one-eyed monster and escapes with his men by hiding under the bellies of sheep. What is less discussed is how they got into that situation in the first place. Odysseus and his men landed on the island of the Cyclopes. They found a cave full of food and supplies. His men urged him to take what they needed and leave. Odysseus refused. He wanted to stay and see the owner of the cave. He wanted to receive gifts, as was the custom of Xenia, Greek hospitality. They stayed. Polyphemus came home. He sealed the cave entrance with a boulder no human force could move. He ate 6 of Odysseus's men, 2 at each meal, before Odysseus devised a plan to blind him and escape. 6 men died because Odysseus chose curiosity and the hope of gifts over the safety of his crew. And then Odysseus made it worse. As the ship sailed away from the island, Odysseus called back to the Cyclops. He mocked him. He told him who had blinded him. Not nobody, the false name he had given, but his real name, Odysseus, son of Laertes, of Ithaca. His men begged him to stop. They knew what this meant. Polyphemus prayed to his father Poseidon, the god of the sea, to curse Odysseus, to ensure he came home late, alone, on a foreign ship, to find trouble in his house. Every difficulty Odysseus faced for the rest of the 10-year journey home traces back to this moment. The ego that could not leave without being known for what it had done. The gods had told Odysseus explicitly, "Do not touch the cattle of the sun god Helios on the island of Thrinacia." Tiresias had prophesied it in the underworld. Circe had warned him. The prohibition was clear and had been stated twice by divine sources. Odysseus knew. His crew knew he knew. They were stranded on the island for a month by bad winds. Their food ran out. His men were starving. While Odysseus slept, his men killed and ate the cattle of Helios. The tradition presents this as the crew's failure, their lack of discipline, their inability to obey the prohibition that Odysseus had passed on to them. But look at what the Odyssey actually records about Odysseus's decision to stop at Thrinacia in the first place. Eurylochus, one of his most senior lieutenants, had argued against stopping. The men were exhausted. They wanted to sail past and not stop. Eurylochus was the one who had advocated for the practical option that did not involve the island of the sacred cattle. Odysseus overruled him. He stopped at the island. He stopped knowing the prohibition. He stopped knowing his men were hungry and the cattle were there. He stopped knowing that bad winds in that region could strand them indefinitely. And then he slept. The sun god Helios demanded that Zeus punish the crew. Zeus sent a storm. The ship was destroyed. Every man aboard drowned. Odysseus alone survived, clinging to wreckage. The last of his men died because he stopped at an island he had been specifically told to avoid. The Odyssey begins by telling you what it is about. The opening lines are explicit. Tell me of that cunning man who wandered for so long after he had sacked the holy citadel of Troy. Many cities he saw, and many were the men whose minds he learned. Many the pains he suffered in his spirit on the wide sea. And then, in the same opening, Homer says, "Yet even so he could not save his companions, hard though he strove to, for they perished through their own reckless folly in eating the cattle of the sun god Helios." The epic blames the crew for the last disaster, for eating the cattle. But it does not ask who stopped at the island they were told to avoid, who overruled the man who said they should sail past, who was asleep when the starving men made the decision they made. The scholar Irene de Jong, one of the leading scholars of Homeric narrative, documented how the Odyssey's narrative perspective consistently presents events from Odysseus's point of view, and with information that protects his reputation. He is the man of many turns. He is always the cleverest person in the room. The text consistently attributes the deaths of his companions to their own failings. But the evidence in the text tells a more complicated story. Odysseus's pride at the Cyclops' cave. His insistence on staying when his men wanted to leave. His failure to leave when he had the chance. His willingness to stop at the one island he should not have stopped at. The hero's story and the crew's story are not the same story. The Odyssey records the deaths of Odysseus's men in remarkable detail. Let us go through what the text shows. At Ismarus, the city of the Cicones, Odysseus and his men sack the city after Troy. They take women and treasure. Odysseus orders them to leave immediately. They refuse, celebrating on the beach. The Cicones gather allies overnight. They attack at dawn. Odysseus loses 72 men in the battle. He ordered them to leave. They didn't listen, but he was their commander. Their deaths happened on his watch. At the Cyclops' cave, 6 men eaten because he wanted to see the cave's owner. In the land of the Laestrygonians, the cannibalistic giants, 11 of his 12 ships are destroyed. The crews are eaten. Only Odysseus's ship escapes because it was moored outside the harbor. Every other ship was inside. 132 men died. The text does not explain why only Odysseus's ship was moored differently from all the others. On Circe's island, 6 men transformed into pigs, restored, but 6 men entered that hall. Elpenor, a crew member who got drunk on Circe's island and fell off the roof and died. Odysseus did not notice he was missing until they encountered him in the underworld. At Scylla's cliff, 6 men taken, 1 from each rowing bench. The Odyssey records their screaming as Scylla ate them. Odysseus had been warned this would happen. He sailed past anyway, because the alternative, Charybdis, was worse. And finally, everyone, on the wreckage of the ship Zeus destroyed after Thrinakia. He started with 12 ships and 1,200 men. He arrived home on a Phaeacian stranger's boat. The Odyssey ends with Odysseus returning to Ithaca, killing the suitors who have taken over his house, and reuniting with Penelope. The hero's journey complete. The cunning man triumphant. But the epic does not end there. It ends with the families of the dead suitors gathering to take revenge, with Athena having to intervene to stop a renewed war, with a peace that the text presents as divinely enforced rather than genuinely achieved. And there is another ending, not in Homer but in later tradition, where Odysseus is eventually killed by Telegonus, the son he had with Circe, killed by his own child, by the product of one of the encounters that kept him away from home. The clever man, the survivor, the one whose intelligence got him home. Also the man whose pride unleashed Poseidon's wrath, whose choices stranded his men, whose sleep was the last thing standing between his crew and the cattle they were not supposed to touch. The Odyssey is a story about survival. It is also, read carefully, a record of everything the survivor's survival cost. The story of Odysseus has been told for 3,000 years as the story of the ultimate survivor, the man whose cleverness overcame every obstacle, the template for the heroic journey home. The actual text tells a more complicated story. A man whose pride unleashed consequences he could not control, whose cleverness, at the crucial moments, was less important than the choices he made before the cleverness was needed, who consistently chose his own curiosity, his own desire to be known, his own rest, at the cost of the people who depended on him. There is a reason this resonates so deeply right now. We live in a world that celebrates survival as its own justification, that reads the person who made it home as the person whose choices were correct because they made it home, that consistently attributes the deaths of those who did not survive to their own failings rather than to the conditions that were created for them. Odysseus made it home. 1,199 men did not. The Odyssey calls him the hero. It also records, in the same text, exactly what his heroism cost the people who trusted him with their lives. He started with 12 ships. He came home alone, and Homer called it a hero's journey. He never asked what the others called it. Every wall holds a story. Some walls were built by the only man left standing.